Hi, Randy, K7AGE. Before we start with the next part of the HF beam construction here, I just would like to say thanks to all my viewers and subscribers, and for so many of you who have taken the time to write me a comment. This series of videos have become very popular. You know, I'm basically getting thousands of views from people all over the world watching me put my antenna system together. There's a couple things I'll be doing from comments that I've received. One, I'm going to build a stand so when the tower is tilted over, it'll take the weight and keep it from bobbling around. There's some of the hardware, some of the steel hardware is starting to rust a little bit, so I've got some stuff to put on there to deal with the rust, and I'll be painting that. One fellow noticed that the threaded rods coming up out of the base only have one nut on the top, and he thought maybe with the vibration and wind that may actually work loose. So I ordered, and I've received some of the special nuts to go on there, and it's going to be a little bit of a project to get those in there. I can't really do it very easily. So, and there's still a lot of work to do besides getting the HF beam finished and up on the tower. I have coaxes to run up the tower, coaxes to dress going above the tower to the antenna so it can rotate, rotor cable to splice, coaxes to come into the house, and some more grounding and such. So there's going to be a few more videos in this series, and I'm really looking forward to getting this done and then work on basically rebuilding my ham shack station again. It's just a bunch of clutter at the moment. So anyway, let's continue on and working on the HF beam. Let me go back to the instructions here, see what I'm supposed to do next. Hi, Randy, K7AGE. Part 2 of working on the HF beam in the basement. In the last video, I got all the center elements put together, and now I'm going to put them on the boom of the tower. So in getting ready to mount the center elements on the boom, I removed the boom to mast clamp, got that out of the way, and I have my tape measure running the whole length of the boom here. So from a page in the manual has the dimensions for all the elements starting from the end of the boom. And when the elements mount on the boom, the clamp plate is on the edge of that plate. We'll see that. So the marking is to the edge of the clamp plate. So as I said, I took my tape measure and I ran it down the length of the boom, and I taped it on so it's there stationary. And then I've, using some white painter's tape, made up labels for all the elements, and I'll now place those on the boom for where the elements go. So the next element I need to mark is for the 10-meter driven element, and that's at 87 3/4. So I have my little tape here, label. I'm just going to slide that under the ruler at 87 3/4. I'm going to tape that on. So the bracket will mount right up to the edge of the tape. And the next one is for the 12-meter driven element at 92 3/4. I have my little label tape here. So 92 3/4. Slide it under there. And get that marked for there. So I'm going to now put the rest on here, and then we'll look at the brackets. So I have the manual page open that talks about the boom to element plate assembly, and it's going to be using these clamps. And there's two bags. This bag here has the 20-meter boom to element plates. These are thicker, heavier duty, and these are the ones for all the others. So open these up. Open up the 20-meter ones. Out of there. So in here are the clamp plates. And they are in, they're not the same. As you can see here, one is kind of off center, one's deeper here. If you can see that very well. But, and the one that's shallower goes against the plate, and I've got them all marked. So that's nice. So that's the 20-meter ones, along with the bolts and nuts. And then this whole plate, this whole bag is for all the others, 17, 15, 12, and 10-meter assemblies. So I cut this open. And another bag of nuts and bolts. So the way this will work is that we have one of the, I'm going to say, wider and one of the shallower ones. So the shallower ones will mount here. The bolts go through, and this will mount. So the one that says plate goes against the plate. Then with the bolts, it'll go through, and this will go around the boom. Again, all the hardware is stainless steel. So I will be putting a little coat of the Permatex on each one of the bolts here. So we start off. If I start on the end, it'll be the 20-meter reflector first. Okay, so these will mount on here right up against the edge of the tape. And so I start off here with the clamp that's labeled plate. So that'll go on there. I'm going to drop the bolts through there. This will go on the bottom. And I'll just finger start the nuts. Gonna squeeze that together. So I'm just gonna tighten these up so they're basically just snug. And again, with the stainless steel, I want to be careful that I don't gall these, applying too much pressure or tension, or fast. A little more. Okay, I have this one tighter than this one here, so I'm going to back it off a little bit. And tighten this one up a little more. Okay, so that's grabbed it there right now. And just double check I'm up against the tape. So that's good. Once I get them all on, I'll then double check the positions, and then I'll go through and get them all even or level with each other. So that's the 20-meter reflector. Next is the 17-meter reflector. Okay, now I'm ready for the 17-meter reflector. It'll go there. I have the smaller clamp plates. They're not quite as wide as the ones for the 20-meter. So it'll go under there. I got my gooped up bolts. And finger tighten the nuts onto the bolts. And those are started. I'm going to start tightening these up. Okay, that's snug for now. So that's how they go on. And I'm just going to go ahead and do all the rest off camera. Well, I have all the element centers now mounted on the boom. They're on here just snug, so I can get them all level. And I'll show you the other end. It won't all fit in the picture here. So we're looking at it from the other end now. So this is where all the driven elements basically are. And you can see these are the screws that we attached them on with originally. And they'll all get connected with, there'll be two pieces of this angle stock that goes down through and connect to all these screws. And then on the end here, the ballon will mount. So that's another reason to keep all these loose, because I'll have to tweak them around a little bit to get the screws to go through all these holes here. And down here, this is the 15 meter driven element, and on 10 meters, the driven element is going to be back there, and then it has a director and not a reflector. So on the 15 meter driven and on the 10 meter director has these extension plates out, and this is where the 6 meter elements will go. Okay, so I have the transmission line just setting down over the screws and all the driven elements here. It all fits, and because of the different diameters in the tubing, there's some spacers that go between the tubing and the bottom of the transmission line bars. So I'm just going to go ahead and put these in here, put it together. So we have 5/8 spacers for the 10 and 12 meter driven elements, and 1/2 inch spacers for the 17 and the 15 driven elements, and a little dab of the NICs on all these screws. And then the transmission line fits down over the top. Now I just run the nuts down. And I'm just going to work all these down one turn at a time. Okay, well, I have all the element centers now tight. Transmission line is on. I've tilted it over here so I can eye it down from the end to see if they're all straight to each other. So it's hard to see with the camera, but I believe they're all fairly level or even with each other. Of course, when you put the elements on and add 10, 15 feet, any differences will show up in a hurry. And I can always tweak it later. It's no big deal. So here's a close-up of the clamp blocks for the 20 meter reflector, and you can see there's a slight gap. So these are not supposed to be tightened down so those touch. You just snug them up tight. You don't have to compress them together. There's so much surface area there, because that's, well, the ones on the 20 meter I think are a 1/2 inch wide, so there's a lot of surface area there. And just a quick note here about the tubing. On the 20 meter element, which is the longest one, the aluminum tubing diameter is 1.25 inches. So that's probably a little bit larger than most of the other antennas out there on the market. And what you can't see is that there's another tube inside of that one for additional strength. So the 20 meter element tubes from JK Antenna come with the inner tube already assembled, and there's a pop rivet on each end here to hold that together. So this is pretty stout. I've now attached the ballon to the transmission lines. It attaches through these L brackets and bolts to the transmission line, and then the ballon has these threaded studs sticking straight out with nuts on there. So this is a 1-to-1 ballon, rated 3 kilowatts, 7 to 54 megahertz, designed for JK antennas by Ballon Designs. Now this is an option when you buy the antenna. In fact, mine was actually shipped from Ballon Designs. So that's on there pretty sturdy, and I also have reattached the boom to mast plate. So I think the next thing to do is set this aside and start assembling the elements. So before I start putting all these together, take some time and check it out in the manual here to make sure I'm doing it right. On page 8 here is a drawing with all of the elements. It shows all the tube diameters and the lengths. And basically the ones down here on the left are on the boom at the moment. This up here talks about how the elements go together. So what I have here is the 1.125" outside diameter tube that'll go into the center piece there. So this is for 20 meters. So what you have to watch out for here is the hole sizes. One end of the first tube here that'll go into what's mounted on the boom has 2 small holes, and the other end has 1 large hole and 1 small hole. So this is always going towards the far end of the beam, because when the next tube goes in, again, it has a large hole and a small hole, and the other end has 2 small holes. This will go in here like that with the 2 small holes, and the screw head will go on the side of the large hole and sit against the inner tube, and the screw will come out and the nut will be on the other side. So when this is compressed, screwed together, it'll pull the inside tube towards the outside tube here. So this is the edge that I'll put the Penetrox on to ensure a good contact. And on the top of the next page, it lists all the element transitions between the different pieces. And basically there's a 1.5", 1.25", 3/4". So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different length screws there, different diameters and different nuts. So you have to get the right screws to go in there. So this table here details out the length of the last piece of tubing that goes into the entire buildup that I'll be putting together. So up until this point, the tubing I'll be putting together is the same length for a driven element as it is for a reflector. But when you're designing an antenna, you'll come up with a length for the driven element, and then you'll come up with a different length for the reflector. It'll be longer behind it. And if you have directors, which we do on 10 meters, it'll be shorter than the driven element. So it's the last piece of aluminum, the smallest diameter that'll go in, which will set the maximum length for each of the elements. So in this bag is all the element hardware. This is all the screws and nuts, or the bolts and nuts to put the elements together. As we saw on that table, there's several different screw sizes and 2 different nut sizes. So they're all individually bagged inside here, which is nice. So let's open this up. So what do we got here? 4 bags of screws and 3 bags of nuts. So going back to the table here, I see for my transition from the 1.25", which is on the boom, to the 1.125", I need the 1.5". I need basically the the SH1024. This bag here, along with the 1024 nut bag. It's this one here. So that'll get me going for the first couple sections. Off to the side of my bench, I got my bucket full of 20-meter element tubing. Okay, so I put a mark on here for 20-meter driven element. So I'm going to put a screw and nut through this hole here, and when I go to assemble the beam, I'll take this out. So this will just be a place to store this, so it won't be doing anything. And I got my anti-seize, and just put a little bit on the end here. Put that through. And I'm just going to tighten that up a little bit so the nut doesn't come off. So now, ready to put the next piece in. And again, large hole is facing out. Here's a large hole here. This will go in like that. So now I need to put some of the electrical joint compound. I had the Penetrox here, and I'm just going to take the top off because this is full. This gray goo. And I just got a little piece of some wire here. So I'm just going to put a dab on here. And I'm just going to put it on this one side of the tube, because this side with the small hole, or this side here, will be opposite the large hole here. So that's where it'll make the contact. So I'll just slide that in there and line up the hole. Screw in a nut. And again, the head, get in there. The head rests on the inside tubing, and then the nut, I need to put a little of this on. I'll dab at my anti-seize. Oops. Yuck. Just tighten this up. And this doesn't have to be super tight. You don't have to compress the aluminum. That's snug. So that's one section together. And I got to do this a lot. There's a lot of aluminum here. So this is one of 4. And since these bolts and nuts are only used on these sections, I'm going to go ahead and put the other 3 together, and then I'll be done with that size hardware. Put my label on the end. So I have these all done now, and I'm going to go get some other tools. I'm going to get some nut drivers instead of the socket, and some Allen wrenches with handles. Make it a little easier. Hopefully not drop it as often. And then we'll go on to some more. I'm going to put the hardware back in the bag, so if I drop one of these out in the yard, I'll need a spare. Okay, so I'm going to just keep working on these and pushing them down through the sawhorses. I've got the next set of screws and nuts out. I got an Allen wrench and a nut driver. I got the next set of tubes here, so I'm not going to record all this. It's just more of the same. We'll be back when there's something interesting. Later. Just show you putting one more of these together. So get my dab of the joint compound. I just look through the big hole and just kind of rub it around on the opposite side. Get the next tubing. Make sure the big holes are in the correct position. My screws. I screw here. Put a little of the anti-seize. Look down through the hole. Put that in. Now I have a nut driver and an Allen wrench here. And this goes a lot faster. It's snug. Now I'm ready to push this on to the next section. the elements all put together except for the very end pieces. And here's the end pieces and they're actually labeled. So for the driven element, it's the shorter ones, and for the reflector, it is the longer ones. So these are the pieces that go in the very end. So, and I've separated these out, so these are the two that I've labeled director here. So let me cut these apart and assemble those. Okay, I got all the 20-meter elements together now. and they're made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of aluminum. So on to the 17-meter ones. As I go along, it'll go a little faster because they're a little shorter. Well, that wraps it up for today. I have all the element sections now together. And you saw before I have all the element centers mounted on the boom. So it's basically all the assemblies are now complete. So again, this is the JK antennas. It's their Navassa 5. So there'll be more videos. I'm not sure what's coming next. I think I have a couple things to do on the tower before we put this together on the tower. So thanks for watching. If you like this, please give me a thumbs up and share and subscribe. And we'll see what's next. Thanks for watching. This is Randy, K7AGE.